And hello, Stacey Campbell here of Shiloh Global. And today we have a hope solution. I really want you to share this program with your friends. If you're listening to this now, share this on Facebook, share it on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, every platform that you have, because I believe today's program is going to offer hope for the future in one of the most critical areas of society. And as you know, that we have started Shiloh Global in order to help guide the people of God into the future, into what God is saying in this new era. And so we've got a whole bunch of programs that are all available on the Shiloh Global app. You can go download, look at them, listen to prophets like James Gall, Cindy Jacobs, Dr. Mark Sharona, who was on recently, and he really talked about moving into the new era in a way that I've rarely heard many people talk. So some of these things are going to blow your mind if you listen to them, but you will also be prepared to be an answer for the future. Many people do not know what to do. The whole world is shaking, changing, shifting, but God never changes. So that's why we have confidence to look into the future. And so as I said, you can see these on the Shiloh Global app and just download that for free off the App Store and the Play Store. And we have had I've invited people on this program who I believe carry a message of hope for the future, who actually carry an answer for the future. And we've had Diane Arnold on separately talking about economic shift. That was so profound. And the Shiloh company, we had a private Q&A with Neil at the end, that if you're part of my Shiloh company, you can be part of those private conversations. But I learned something that Neil has been trying to say to me personally for a long, long time, but I only just caught it last week economically, and about how to prosper economically, even when we're moving into economic downturns, when there's a slowing of the economy. You can prosper in every season when you use the principles of the kingdom of God. So that you also want to see. And tonight we have, or this morning or this afternoon, depending on what time you're watching this, we have Neil's wife, Diane, who is a marriage and family therapist. And they're both going to come on together for the first part. And then Diane is going to take it away. And we have entitled this program, How to Fix Family. Now, that is a big order. I don't know if we're going to get all of that. We might need to have you on for many programs, Diane. But that's the heart of it. How do we fix family in a very broken down family era? And many of the prophets have said, a la Chris Valentin and Cindy Jacobs, I believe, were saying that really one of the areas to focus on in the new era is family. Wow. So I wanted you to speak to that. And why don't you introduce yourself? You have a program called the Family Collection. People can actually watch programs on this that are way more in depth. Can you introduce who you are, where you come from, how people can get your resources to go deeper into this subject? Some people watching today are in really hurting family situations, and they don't know where to turn to. They don't know where to get help. How can you help them? Tell us who you are and where you come from.
Yes, absolutely. I'm Diane, and I'm with my husband, Neil, that hopefully Neil will wave at you. And Stacey is talking that, yes, I am a licensed therapist, licensed professional therapist, and I work mainly with marriage and families. As she already said, Neil's a banker, but together, because we have had such a heart for this, I used to laugh with Stacey and say, before I wanted to really help push, capacity or culture along with this, when we would move into neighborhoods, I would, immediately trek out and find out, hey, how are we going to get together as community? What does it look like for our neighborhood to do things together, or to know each other, or to know the family members? So it's just been a passion. And we've started something called the Family Collective. And you can find it on Facebook, or you can, it's got a website that's a little bit under construction. And we can talk a little bit more about what that offers, if we have time. But out of that, we're trying to give, people opportunities to find communities, or find, like you said, Stacy, solutions to some of the problems that we're facing, yeah. And Neil has joined me, and I've asked him to kind of start today, because he's got to leave a little early, on why family is so important right now.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. I'm not the expert. I'm just the opinionated part of the program, but Diane will do mop-up. So Stacey, thank you so much. We love what you're doing on trying to speak to issues. And I guess if I could say one thing, really importantly is there's a war for family going on in culture today. And I strongly believe unless we mobilize as warriors, and I mean that in every sense of the word, to fight for family in our generation, people will not understand the importance of family, I believe, within a generation. And why is family important? I want to highlight three things. Number one, identity. We get our identity from family. And never before have we had such a crisis of people not knowing who they are. And it's because we have an epidemic of broken family. And certainly fatherlessness, safety, all those things that we're supposed to achieve in family, we recognize it's not happening the way it's supposed to. Secondly, health. Your health is actually tied to the kind of family structure that you're a part of. And there's an epidemic of loneliness that actually negatively impacts your health. And Diane's going to talk about that. So, we care about other kinds of diseases, but I think sometimes we don't recognize that broken family is a disease that's robbing the health of our nation and of our young family members. Thirdly, family is supposed to be a safe place where people are launched into their destiny. That we're supposed to be a community of mothers and fathers that help people explore and learn and find their passion in life. And I believe that those three things are critically important, not just to individual family members, they're important to society in general. And so I want to just encourage you as we go through this program, make family a high priority, even if your family was imperfect. I think the beauty of the gospel is most of the family members I know in the Bible had stories that were less than perfect. And yet God is after the value he placed in family. And we've got to join this war.
Yeah.
I loved the way you put that. You said we have to fight as warriors for the family. Now, you wouldn't have known this, but Patricia King's whole prophetic time was on moving into an era of war. Now, a lot of times people think that's just like a war in the world, and that might be true, or a war in a nation, that may be true. However, it's an attitude. And the Lord showed me that one of the theme verses of this year is that there's a time for everything under heaven, a time for peace and a time for war. And this is a time for war. And we have to war for family. You said fight as warriors for the family, for those very profound reasons, 3 reasons. Can you just repeat those 3 reasons quickly?
Yeah, happily. So identity, there's a crisis of identity because of broken family. Secondly, our health. Loneliness impacts our health. And third, a place where you can have a safe launch of your destiny. And I want to put a caveat around this, Stacy, because we're in I'll call it an environment where people are growingly hostile. I want to tell you that being a warrior here means reconciling love. That's our instrument of war. Reconciling love, because it is the power that's going to overcome the amount of, I'll call it just disconnection and outright. We see people today that don't think like us, and our first is to argue and be loud. And it's actually the gospel of love that brings people to the power of the gospel.
That's amazing, because the Bible says the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. They're not like guns and swords, but they're mighty through God to pull down strongholds. And reconciling love is a weapon. And I can tell you that many of my own family members think different. My own children, we have very different points of view on many subjects, but we love each other, and we all come together all the time because the love trumps the differences of opinion, the different political points of view, the different, all of those things that are going on in the world. And reconciling love is the highest weapon. The greatest of these is love. So Diane, what would you say?
Well, I want to, because I love stories, and I think that they kind of impart, what we're talking about here. I'm not the most amazing cook. If my children are on, no comments,
Amen.
But
Amen. Amen.
You have a Wesley King cook too, though. You've got someone in the house, but we still do family dinners. We still try to do Sunday dinners. We've still made it a point, because I understand how much that connection is. And I was laughing when we left, before this trip, we're at a restaurant, and I said, well, it wasn't a pot roast, but it was amazing, because we sat down and just connected. In fact, we started telling stories. The whole table started telling stories of God's power and goodness, testimonies. We were just like, hey, this happened then, and hey, this happened then. And we have one of our sons is a literal seer. And he said, do you see what's happening? You're inviting all the angels here. And I was like, okay, let's do it,
Wow.
And like your family, we don't agree in many different areas of life if we were to lay them all out. But we can agree on God's goodness. We can agree on, what he's doing in people's lives, and we can celebrate that with each other. And we have a little bit of I don't even know what it's called, a group message thing that we do. And if someone needs prayer, we've learned how to be authentic with each other and say, it's a bad day. It's just not a great day. And no one shoots back and says, just get over it. They're like, hey, what's going on? How can I pray? I'm going to lift you up. So we've learned how to take those differences that you talk about, that could be the center of our conversations. Some of them are big enough, and kind of go, okay, we're going to do this differently. We're going to play, like Neil said, on the love level.
So let's personalize that. So I know families, and we all know families, and sometimes even in our own family, we have times where there's like a deep division.
Yes.
It's not easy to come together. And
yes.
How would you overcome some of that? What would you say that a meal is a great place to start? Just have them over for a meal. What would you do? Give.
Yeah. So Neil, are you still on there? Can I tell another story? Did he have to leave?
No, he's there.
Yes, please.
Okay. So before one of our friends got married, they asked or we asked them if we could sit down and do a blessing with the families over that marriage. And so we had both sides of the family in the room, and one family, was still together and one family was separated. So we had extra family members, and in obedience to God, we blessed the family, right? And
you bless, hold on, I just want to take it. So you have two families. One is broken, meaning they're separated, or
Yep, we've got one with divorced parents, one has parents together, and we've got all of those in a room. And those two parents, we're helping them bless this new covenant of their children. Well, it was beautiful and it was very meaningful. But I think sometimes as a human, we don't think of what happened in the spirit realm because of that. So years later, one of the mothers visits, and God just whispers to Neil that prayer. What is it exactly he said to you? That prayer
is a legal standing in the spirit realm, and that there was something that was going to happen.
Right. So one of her children, who would be an extreme of the prodigal, an extreme of the prodigal, came home over to see her, stayed overnight, woke up the next day, asked her to go to church, which at this point, the family, I don't even know, was really going to church. And she's like, okay, I'll take you to church. Got saved at church and started calling their family members for Bibles. I think, in answer to your question, Stacy, we don't nearly understand the promises sometimes that God has put before us to claim what he's already given us.
And the blessing.
And the power of blessing.
Single prayer that it never ends. Those prayers are heard. And it's just a matter of time. And eventually that seed will bear fruit. That's so powerful. So Diane, if we are moving into an era where, well, we're finishing an era and continuing an era where the family has absolutely been broken. There's, free, the things that we see in our culture in terms of, it's not a normal family unit.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. So how do you start fixing family? If a family comes to you as a marriage and family therapist, what is one of your key things that you say to them if they have any hope of reconciliation? What's the key thing?
Yeah. So let me back up to, I'm going to answer that to Neil's list, because that's got a lot of directions that could go. So if we're taking, one of the things, like you said, we have identity problems, right? Nobody knows who they are. And we're celebrating that they don't have to know who they are, right? Numbers on that are 43% of Americans think their relationships don't have meaning. 1 in 5 people say that they don't feel close to others. This is pre-COVID, by the way. And 53% say they don't have meaningful interaction, right? So I'm going to go back to the identity thing. I am, and we as a church, we as Christians have talked forever about the problem of fatherlessness, and and I don't think really have gotten to take a look at the consequences in the eye, and here we are, right? We know that,
and there's 80 some or 90 some percent more chance of being incarcerated. Right. There's this, there's that. But the single parent families in the audience were so devastated by that statistic that I realized I kind of lacked compassion in sharing it. I didn't kind of add enough qualifications. So there might be single family parents listening to this, and the feedback I got from just sharing the statistics of fatherlessness was like, well, we're doomed then. There's no hope for our children. We're doing the best we can. We can't help it that we've been abandoned. So, can we just frame this, because it is a truism. It is truth. And that's why the Bible says at the end of the age, God himself is going to turn the hearts of fathers back to their children, and the hearts of children back to their fathers. This is a divine mandate. This is a prophetic mandate. This is where God is going to restore the family union. And so can you speak to that framework?
Oh, and it's actually where I was headed. I have phenomenal empathy. Most of the people that grew up on that didn't make the choices. You know, their parents made the choices. And here they are, or they've been in a very hopeless situation themselves, and they've had to, figure out how to raise their own kids. I'm kind of saying it's a problem. Single mothers is a problem. It's our problem. This problem doesn't belong to the government. This doesn't belong to only to them to try to figure out how to survive on a loaf of bread. This is a problem that we have to admit out there, and we have to figure out, solutions on how to take care of it. And Neil and I have talked, the government's good at doing, or has been good at putting in place things that I think the church should be doing. For instance, we talked right before this program, we should have a daycare for single moms. Like everywhere you turn, something should be built so that they have a place that they can show up at their work and not worry about someone, taking care of their children, right? We were actually just got to go to Cornerstone Church in Texas a couple days ago, and they've started this thing for moms that have chosen not to have an abortion, where not only do they get to live in this nice home, it's a very beautiful home, but their children are going to get to go to their school for their entire, K through 12 grades. They're not only taking it on, I'm going to help those moms with that decision, but we're going to make sure those kids don't get lost in the system.
That is so huge. The Lord's Prayer begins
right
with the word our.
Yeah.
Our. Right there. That's the very first word of the most basic prayer that Jesus taught his disciples to pray, our. And when you say this is our problem, because right now, I don't think much of society views it as our problem. They view it as their problem.
Yeah.
And, maybe they'll do something small. I remember when our church started, a bunch of men in our church said, how are we going to solve the single mom problem? Because we're doing all these fights for families to keep their babies, for single moms to keep their babies. But what are we doing about it? And they started Hope Society and Hope for the Nations, where they actually built homes, nice homes, apartments, furnished them, and put single moms in there. And it goes on for this day, almost 30 years later, housing people, housing single moms and in beautiful places. And I think there's businessmen that are fathers that can come together to do something like that for the single moms. They don't maybe have a husband or a dad. And then, Big Brother programs. I think that was initially started by a group of people that wanted to help single moms and people that didn't have fathers or men in the household. So those are small solutions that turned into big solutions, right, because it was a corporate responsibility, not their responsibility. But as you so aptly put, it's our problem. It's what's in your neighborhood? Are there single moms in your neighborhood?
Yes.
Can you have them over for dinner? Are there small things you can do?
Oh, bigger than that, Stacey.
Yeah.
How about, like I offer to take your kid for a year. I'm at home with mine and I offered to take yours in for a year. I mean, if people did that, I had 3 growing up. That was a lot anyway. And it would have been a lot, but I would have committed to watching someone's child for a while because I was doing my thing anyway. And I think that there are lots of those with a lot more creative people than me that we can say, hey, I'm the church. Let's do this. What does the church do? It works toward these solutions together.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. We had one of our son's friends come and live with us for several months because his family was
Right.
well, for over a year actually, and we had 5 kids. It's so easy to be done. It's very little, because his mom had to move to a different city. He wanted to graduate in his 12th grade 12 year with all of his friends, and I mean, so we just took him in for months, almost a year, and it's not that hard to do, and I think, like you say, if the mom is struggling and needs a safe place where she can come and go see the child all the time, but they actually get to experience a stable family with mothers and fathers and brothers together in all their foibles, it actually is it's so healing. It's so profound. It gives them a taste of what it actually looks like. And to this day, that boy is our son's best friend,
Right.
got married and now he has his own family, and it's an awesome thing.
Right. Right. No, I love that. And and what Cornerstone was doing, with the moms that chose not to have an abortion, taking that further and saying, I'm going to help that next generation so that they can get good school, and that they can get good meals during the day. And the same thing could be, done on like you just said, with hey, I'm a mom at home with my kids. I'm homeschooling right now. Hey, maybe I offered to get your third grader too. Is this what it's what I'm doing? It's what I'm doing right now. I realize this is not a long-term solution, but I think that, people are always saying, well, what can I do? What's the thing that I can do? Critically, if you look at the path, we need to deal with the single mom situation. Like you said, we need to help them somehow, some way. And, we need to help with their children's, education and, critical path, so that we start to break what happens, in the generational system part.
We're talking about the big topic, how to fix family. There's some really small solutions that anybody can do, that any family can do. Take in the neighbor. I grew up with 5 brothers and a twin sister, and my parents always were bringing in all the neighborhood kids that didn't have a family like we had a family. Our house was central, to the entire neighborhood. They were coming over for meals. They were coming over overnight. They were, anytime their parents weren't home, they were always at our house. And when you have a family, you can just bring people over to live life with you so that people can experience it.
Yes.
And that is a huge solution. It's a small thing that any family can do. Whether you have 1 kid, 5 kids, 7 kids, doesn't matter. Just give them a taste of what family feels like and lives like.
Yes. Yes.
So what
yeah,
are some other solutions, would you say?
Pardon? Say that again.
What are some other ideas that you do to build connection in family in crises?
So I kind of think that that's the biggest thing with our identity, because, I'm, like you said, I'm not picking on families that, struggled not having a dad there, but our dads, if you look at, what research says, they give us our identity. They give us that sense of safety and security. And, we want to go think of, like I said, creative solutions on how to help people, with that problem. And then, like Neil talked about, we have what's going on with our health. And I know a lot of people don't think about this, or before they didn't, but right now we have an epidemic of loneliness going on, and people are not going outside, they're not connecting, and it's got a massive cost. They basically say 4 times any other disease. And we need to deal with
So they
that.
actually, in the health community, call loneliness a disease?
Yeah, they call it an epidemic. In the UK, they have actually hired a minister of loneliness. they are hired, whatever they put on their, you know, I don't even know what the structure is called, but they've put someone on staff in the country because they know what the cost is.
Wow, I would say that that is somewhat of an indictment on the church, because the Bible says God puts the lonely in families, and it's really our mandate to love our neighbor. That is, the second is like the first, love your neighbor as yourself. And so if we are putting all of these things onto government, it means that the church, which is in every community, little churches, big churches, all kinds of denominations, is not reaching out and solving the loneliness epidemic somehow, but we're expecting people to go to church instead of the church going to the world, into all the world, and making disciples of families. So that's a massive indictment, that a loneliness minister is a government paid position. It's good that they're doing it something, but it's bad that the church is not effective in that.
Right. And again, we absolutely can be, but let me back up for a second and just give you, because I want people to understand the magnitude of this. This is research that was done in 2018, okay, pre-COVID, that 40%, 46% of Americans report being lonely, 34% spend mealtime alone. I can't even imagine what that number is now. 30% of all households only have one person. And more importantly, being lonely, or your brain being lonely, and I want to qualify what that means, increases our odds of early death by 26% and is worse for you than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And it has a greater risk than associated with obesity.
Wow. So it's one of the worst health crises, the inability to connect with other people. Being lonely actually spawns all kinds of other things. That's why maybe the Bible says that it wishes that you would prosper as your soul prospers. You can't prosper if your soul's not prospering. Everything shrinks. Wow. So how do you solve that? What are some, how do we fix that?
I love what you just said. That's good. I'm going to remember that. I also thought when I was putting this together, God said, it's not good for man to be alone. And I thought, well, he's God. He probably wasn't just talking about a wife. There was probably a deeper concept in that, because it does affect our brain and it does affect our health. And worse than that, Stacy, when we stay isolated, okay, when we stay alone, because I can be in a crowd of people and still have an isolated brain, right? Think about that. That's exactly what social media does. I'm in a crowd of people, but I don't really have any authentic connection with people. So, when we're looking at how do I solve this, I'm kind of like, hey, let's step back a second and see what's possibly causing this. What are we doing as a society? I know in North America, we're a ton more individualistic, right? Than you travel extensively, than a lot of other countries. They live a little more in community. Wouldn't you say that's kind of true?
Very true. And even the Africans have a proverb, which I've often quoted, that it takes a village to raise a child. Right. So they don't have even a nuclear understanding of family. They understand that everybody's there. The elders are there. They're going to watch over those kids. And they feel connected to a whole community. And growing up in a small town in Saskatchewan, as I did, you have, everybody knows what's going on, in the whole community, and everybody's kind of watching out for each other too.
For sure. You had aunts and uncles that you found out later weren't your real aunts and uncles, because people really actually got outside and got to know their neighbors. And here's why I really want people to fight against that, because it's comfortable right now. We've all stayed alone. We've all stayed inside to kind of just stay there. And I want to explain that when we go into that space, there's like a base level of cortisol, you know, that stress hormone that's released when we isolate or when we're lonely, which is great if you're being chased in the woods by a bear or something. It increases that and it makes you want to do something. You know, in this case, this is something that's kind of just staying in your body, and it affects your sleep, and it affects, you know, most importantly, it affects how you want to connect, if you want to connect. So your capacity to look for danger when you're really isolated or lonely goes up. So you will look for threats. And if you just think about culture right now, I'm not going to say a word, but you just think about culture right now. I'm looking for, there's a possibility that someone's, you know, not healthy for me or dangerous or different than me. That increases in your brain because you're isolated. So it's doing it on purpose. It's saying, okay, you're in a threat mode. Let's start looking for danger. So I always tell people, think about being like in a dark cave. This part of your brain, the visual acuity part, goes up because I've got, hey, there might be a snake moving in this cave, right? But at the same time, your natural compassion for others in your brain goes down. Because right now I'm in isolation mode and I need to take care of numero uno. So, you know, my ability to look for danger goes up. My ability to have compassion for you goes down. And we call that alienation, you know, and it's a precursor of kind of us not wanting to connect with other people, because now you come to the mouth of my cave and I kind of go, yeah, you might actually be an enemy, so I'm not going to let you in.
Wow. So the phenomenon of being alone too long, creating loneliness, being shut in, as it were, actually produces, I don't know, maybe in the extreme case, this plethora of conspiracy theories that we're seeing. We're all, something bad's going to happen. Everybody's got that kind of mindset instead of looking for solutions and connection and actually solving problems. So it's so important to be reaching out to your neighbor. Basic Christianity, love your neighbor as yourself. Right. Who is your neighbor? Who lives beside you? Do you know the people who live beside you? Are you reaching out into other people that might be alone right now? Those kind of things are critical. That's a small way how to fix families, how to go there. Now, we are running out of time, Diane. So I want you to just give a short, if you have one more point that you want to bring it. Then we're going to have Shiloh Company ask you a few questions. Okay.
So I think one of my hero examples of how to like step out of this community situation was a lady that is called a turquoise table, and you can look for it online. But she got tired of not having connection with her neighbors. And so she got her old picnic table, painted it blue, set it on the front curb, and waited for her neighbors to come home at the end of the day. And first, no one stopped. Then she put her kids out there hoping for better. That was a little more action. Then she brought food. But inevitably, she turned her neighborhood around. They were away from connecting and away from having community, you know, interaction. And, you know, this was like everybody stopped at her table on the way home. And it's been replicated time and time again. But I love the fact of, yes, you know, it's up to me to get to know you. I always say, hey, everybody, let's play a game called Connect One. Once a day, connect with somebody, because you know that they may be, you know, struggling to interact authentically themselves. So you may be the solution.
Wow. And how simple is that? A picnic table in your front yard. I mean, anybody can do that. You could even put it in your apartment block parking lot or somewhere off to the side. So anyway, so, pardon me? Yeah. In our cul-de-sac in Napomo, where we live. Every once a month on a Friday, we all go sit out, and everybody brings their lawn chair out, and we sit at the end of the street, and we all talk to one another. And that's kind of an older community, and there's people in their 80s there, their 70s, their 60s, their 50s, but we all sit out there and see how everybody's doing. We do that once a month, sometimes twice a month, when we do it regularly, but it just brings that little bit of connection. It was one person's idea, and everybody talks about how they're doing. So it's a great thing. So anyway, I want to just invite you to go to, on the chat there, you see the website of Neil and Diane, thefamilycollective.com. You can go on to that. There's a whole bunch of programs on there. The familycollective.co, actually. And so you can see a whole bunch of things on there. There's also courses you can take that if you want to be skilled and learn how to do this so that you can teach these and do these things in your own neighborhoods and your own families. So I want you to say also that if you want to join my Shiloh company, which I'm going to end this program quickly, but Shiloh is going to stay on, then you can go to shilohcompany.com and sign up. All the information is there. If you want to see these programs, you can download our free Shiloh Global app and share these freely with your friends. Share the Facebook, share the app, get people understanding that there is a future and there is a hope in every situation, even when everything's shaking. So when we know what's coming, we can be prepared for it. And it's time to gird up our mindsets for an aggressive season. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to pull down strongholds. We are the solution. We are the light of the world and the salt of the earth. And it's our responsibility, not the government's, to bring hope in this world. So Diane and Neil, thank you so much. You always offer so many great solutions, and you are doing something at the very nuclear level, like the just basic connection level, whether you're a family yet or not, just as an individual. What you are teaching everybody is how to connect interpersonally so that you can be whole and healthy yourself, have an identity, but more than that, become a productive part of society and community, helping others. And so I just want to thank you so much for all you do. Years of study, it's bearing great fruit. And God bless you, my friend. Do you have any parting words, Diane?
No, thank you so much for allowing us to just have this time with you, Stacy, and the Shiloh company.